Joe, how you feeling?
I feel good. Yeah.
You feel good enough to play on Sunday?
Yeah. I mean, I've never really talked about injuries before, so I don't know what to say. But yeah, I feel good.
How did yesterday go?
It went well. I was happy with how it went. So.
What's the biggest obstacle playing with that type of shoulder sprain? How does that make things more difficult than maybe other injuries?
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know. I've never really dealt with it before, but I guess there's a point where it's not really up to you. It's just kind of how it's reacting and how you feel. So that's why I wanted to make sure I was able to test it out a little bit. So
was Wednesday just a day where just give it one more day and then give it the shot on Thursday?
I didn't want to do anything to, I think the idea was just treatment and get as much of that as possible, get it feeling as good as possible, and then go from there.
You just talked about needing to see how it reacts. Is that why, even though you say you feel good about playing, you really need to wait a couple more days just to make sure on Sunday everything's good, or at this point, is it good?
Well, I feel pretty good. I just think, you don't want to just assume you're going to be able to throw or not really know. So I think I definitely wanted to be able to go out there at some point this week and feel good about what was going on. I think that's all I was trying to say.
As I kind of said earlier, kudos to you on wanting to try to play through this. Why is it so important to try to play through something where you could have easily said with the bye week on the other side to let's just let this heal and come back out the other side?
I don't know. I didn't really give it much thought. I just always, it's like if you can, you try to play. You're the quarterback, and then you take it from there. So I think my initial instinct is always just, whatever we can do to get there and then adjust.
Do you anticipate doing just your normal pregame workout and all that kind of stuff on Sunday?
Yeah. I don't do much, going into the game anyway. And I mean, I don't necessarily anticipate trying to do any more just to go feel it out.
Once the game starts, do you expect any limitations, or are you just going to treat it the same?
I'm just going to treat it the same. If I'm out there and then I'm treating it the same, just like any other game.
Has it felt better as the week's going on? I mean, has it kind of been the same amount of?
I think it's gotten better. Like there's certain things about it that have gotten better. I feel like I just not having dealt with it before, but I feel like it's something that definitely you can feel improvement on day to day. But at the same time, it's one of those things that you can aggravate it and piss it off and all those things. So,
given how the offense responded in the Steeler game and against the Jets for the most part last week, do you feel a sense of obligation when the offense really produced with you there and you want to?
I think when you're the guy that's out there playing, there's always a sense of obligation to go out there and be there for your team. I mean, I missed, in kind of terms of that, showing up for your team. Like I missed my second son's birth because I thought it was important for the quarterback to be out there and. I didn't know I was going to miss it. Like it just so happened that he came on that day. But I do feel a sense of obligation being out there for the guys that you play with, for sure.
Where does that come from? Like, why do you have that?
I don't know. I think it's just natural to, when you play this game to kind of want to be out there with everybody.
Did you allow yourself to think, maybe I won't be able to go this week, or has it been from the jump? I mean, Zach said on Wednesday you want to play. I mean, it's been pretty clear from that perspective.
Yeah. I think that was just always the mindset, is getting to the point where I can and working towards that. And then, I think with this specifically, it was always going to come down to you just can't. But I think mindset wise, it was just, I am until, I just know I can't.
Have you had this before, Joe?
No.
I was curious, would you be willing to share what the worst injury you've ever played through is?
There was one. We ended up playing New England in the playoffs, and we won. I only threw 11 passes that game, but it was something I was dealing with all year. I make sure I pad my hips up and stuff these days. Ever since then, because I had something on my hip that just kept blowing up, and by the end of the year, my whole left leg was just destroyed. I was not moving well at all, and that was an issue. It was just because it was something that you felt like was getting better, and then all of a sudden you land on it again, playing on turf or whatever, and it was just the length that I had to deal with that, like the length of the year that I had to deal with that, and the fact that it was annoying because you kind of felt like it was getting better and then it would get worse again. So
You mentioned you didn't complete many passes in that game, but any good memories from maybe something you did where you kind of pushed through in that game against the Patriots?
I don't know. We won the game, and we didn't have to throw the ball that much. So anytime you go win a playoff game up in New England, it's a good memory.
Ray Rice took a lot of pressure off you.
First play of the game, Ray took for a touchdown. So yeah.
Do you weigh the repercussions of maybe playing now, what that would mean down the road, the rest of the season, or do you just look at it as this week only?
I think there's times to do that, and I don't think I've necessarily thought about that in this case.
How much of this is about just maximizing, like when you got here, you said maximizing all the opportunities you get in your career. How much of that is?
Listen, I don't know. I think you can try to like frame it in that context, but I just feel like it's always kind of been my mindset, and I'm not changing it now. So.
What's the mood been like after a loss like y'all had last week as y'all getting ready for this week? What's the mood been like around the team?
Yeah, listen, it's tough. I honestly feel like, in spite of that, we've had a good week mentally and physically. I think guys have been, chomping at the bit to get back out there, and I think it's shown in a positive way. I think there's been a lot of energy, and practices have had some good tempo to them, and I think that's a good sign.
How crucial is this game, especially going into the bye, so you guys have
I've talked about it before. I mean, they're all so crucial, every single one. We only play 17 of them, and yeah, it's more than we used to, but they're still all so important. And I've also talked about the fact that you can't really think about those things because that's just putting more pressure on you, and it's making you it'll make you make decisions that are bad. They're not how you should be playing the game. So that's always the case. That's always there looming, how important the game is. But we got to keep our blinders on and just go do what we do.
What was your reaction? Found out the defense met players only earlier this week.
Yeah, listen, I hopefully those guys got something out of it, and I feel like sometimes as players you feel like you have to do those things when you're not maybe playing the way you want to, and I don't know if they end up being positive or not, but just from, like I said a couple minutes ago, talking about the energy that we had at practice and the tempo that we were playing with, it feels as though those guys came together a little bit, and you could tell by the way they practiced this week.
How many have you been a part of? How many players only meetings?
Not many. I mean, a few throughout the years, and they're usually a little awkward and uncomfortable, and it usually takes a little bit of time to kind of get to the point. But then you eventually do get there and find the reason for having it, and they usually end up being positive because of that. But as you can imagine, like when you call those, there's probably a little bit of awkwardness and there's a little bit of tension just because it's usually happening because of stuff that you don't want is going on the field. So, but yeah, in my experience, you probably sit in there and it's tough to kind of get going, and then as you get going, you find some reason that you find the reason that you did it, and hopefully you have a good reaction to it.
Is that kind of what you touched on after the game on Sunday, that everybody has to kind of focus on doing their own job to the best of their ability and have blinders on?
Yeah, you can't worry about what you've done in the past, and you can't worry about what's about to happen 3 hours after the kickoff. You have to just go play the game, and you can't worry about what people are thinking when things happen throughout the course of a game. You just gotta just go play, and you look up when it's all said and done, and you're cheering with your teammates, and it's such a hard thing to do. I think it's kind of like corny and cliche to talk about, but it is such a hard thing to do. Is just be in the moment. Being in the moment is, in my experience, it's just you find a way to do it, but maybe it's like, how can you just take this secret formula and be in the moment at all times? There's always things trying to distract you, and I think that's the biggest cause of just making decisions and playing not up to your standards because you're worried about things other than the task at hand. And that's why when you talk about routines and everything like that, it's giving yourself the best percentage to be in the moment when you need to be in the moment. And I don't think it's like a foolproof method that you have. Like you have your routine and he has his routine, and it works hopefully 95% of the time, and you can be in the moment. But there's all these outside distractions they're just distracting you from being in the moment when you need to be in the moment. And one of those things is, how did we play last week? Man, we really need to win. Well, really needing to win isn't a real thing. It's worrying about stuff that you can't control in the moment, and you got to get out of that mindset.
As a leader and as the guy that's throwing the ball, when you have a receiver that's struggling with drops like Andre is, do you voice confidence? Do you approach them about that, or does that almost kind of make it?
I think he's like he's a very hard worker, and I think he's, you can see it on him that he wants it to get better and he wants to play well. So I think because of his personality and the way he is, you can see it on him, and it makes it so there's. So yes, you go up to him, or he comes up to you, and a conversation happens, and it's all positive. I think a lot of him as a player. I really do. I think he's a hell of a wide receiver, and I think he can do a lot for us. And there's reasons for things to happen that you don't want to happen, and it can be hard to get out of that. But it really has no weight on what we do going forward, and trying to get. You can try to get that across to somebody, but eventually they somehow have to get in that groove and and go make it happen. And I think he's the type of person that has the ability to do that.
There's a lot of talk about Carson Wentz having to play through an injury and kind of now is on IR. As a quarterback and as a player, what's that kind of conversation like as you kind of try to convince folks, hey, I'm good enough to play, I want to go play, versus maybe when someone wants to step in, maybe not even in this case, but in general, what's that balance like of advocating for yourself to go out there and play whatever it is you feel like you can play?
Yeah, well, I think there's a line probably, and obviously, like if you're the type of player that's going to want to play through a lot of stuff, there's certain things and certain injuries that somebody's going to have to take that out of your hands. Like there has to be somebody that has the player's best interest, other than them, because sometimes they're not always going to be able to make the right decision. I know, but I think it's so hard to talk about. It's just one of those things. Like it's every situation is different, and I really would lean on like relying on the players at like what he thinks and what he wants to do. But depending on the type of injury, you have to have somebody that can take that out of his hands at certain times. I know I hurt my hip in 2018, the last year I was in Baltimore, and looking back, like I don't know if I could have played. I probably couldn't have, but I really wanted to. And it took a lot of convincing to not, and I felt like there were ramifications to playing, and like that was one instance I can remember where they did kind of take it out of my hands, and I do think that's important, but I don't know if you can you probably have to go case by case. I don't know if there's any like steadfast rule where it's just this is it. It's black and white. There's always going to be a little bit of gray area.
Did you hold that against anybody when they did, or because that's the one thing that sometimes that can happen. Were you upset when they?
No. When people are doing that, when people are making those decisions and looking out for you, even if you don't agree with it, and even if you don't agree with it 10 years later, I think I'm still like mindful enough to realize that they had my best interest, like in their heart. Like they weren't trying to make a bad decision for me or anything like that. So even if, like I said, even if 5-10 years later I feel like it was the wrong decision, I wouldn't hold that against them. They're doing their job, and they're trying to look out for a player, and I think that's important to have.
You guys were lights out all game, except maybe the last two series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you, after looking at it, and just if there's anything that they did kind of dictated what happened.
Well, I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of randomness to it, and other times, like in the second to last drive, we've completed little bubbles and little throws to the edge, like on run plays a lot, and we didn't, and we missed one, and then, and that throws you off a little bit, or you've been running for chunks, and then you have one run where maybe it's not a chunk, and you have an opportunity to make a chunk play, and you don't, and like. Throughout the course of a game, like you don't, it's crazy how many little things happen where you kind of get away with. You convert a 3rd and 8 that maybe you shouldn't have converted, and then that drives the rest of the drive. And I think we weren't good enough. Looking back, we weren't good enough on 1st and 2nd down in those last 2 drives, and it ended up hurting us.
How big is the bye going to be for you personally, just to kind of catch your breath a little?
Yeah, I think always. There's a reason there's a bye, and it's probably based off of the physicality of this game. But I think always guys need that little that week to kind of unwind a little bit and gear up for the rest of the season. So I don't think it's any different just because of what I've been going through this year. I think it's just there's a reason we have it, and it's to get your body right and get your mind right.
What was the date of the birth? The second.
September 15th, 2013.
Yeah, you didn't need to put that.
If it was your first, would you have missed the game?
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, we made the decision that was going to be. That's how it was going to be. I didn't actually think it would happen, but it did.